Chapter 1. The Rope in the Orchard. Vivian Kessler didn't cry when she opened the door. Her eyes were dry, voice steady. She wore black, not for mourning, Helena suspected, but to armor herself. Her hands, though, betrayed her. They twisted a pale silk handkerchief as if wringing out water or guilt. "Thank you for coming," she said. Helena stepped into the farmhouse, scanning the foyer automatically. Old wood, no photos on the walls, a faint trace of apples and something chemical, like wood polish or bleach. "I appreciate discretion," Vivian added. "The sheriff already thinks I'm crazy. Why don't you start at the beginning?" They sat at the kitchen table. Helena took out a slim notebook, though she rarely needed it. The important details always stuck. "It was a Wednesday morning," Vivian began. "I went out to the orchard around 7. Peter always handled the harvesting, but he'd left the bins out overnight. And She broke off. Not with emotion, with effort, like she was trying to keep her account surgical, clean. "I found him hanging in the northwest quadrant, from a crossbeam between 2 trees. Did he leave a note? No." Her voice was firm. "Peter wasn't suicidal. He had no history of depression. He was planning our anniversary trip that weekend. He was terrified of heights, Miss Monroe. He wouldn't have climbed that ladder unless someone forced him." Helena tilted her head. "You think he was murdered?" "I know it." Outside, the orchard sprawled beyond the back porch. Dozens of leafless apple trees stood in symmetrical rows, their branches clawing at the grey sky. The harvest was done. Only a few bruised fruit littered the ground. "I need to see where it happened," Helena said. Vivian's boots crunched over the damp earth as she led her through the orchard. The trees grew closer together the deeper they walked. The northwest quadrant was partially shaded by a hill, colder than the rest. "There," Vivian said, pointing. The branch was still rope-scarred. A ladder lay folded beneath it, weathered, slightly warped. Helena crouched beside it. The first thing she noticed was the way the rung spacing matched the bruises in the sheriff's autopsy photo, horizontal, uneven, like Peter had slipped and hit his ribs. But there was no splintering, no sign of struggle. She scanned the ground. Leaves, mud, a trail of apple bins stacked too neatly for an active harvest. Then she saw the shed. It stood just beyond the tree line, small, metal, with a crooked door, unlocked. Inside, the air was colder still. Tidy. Rake, shovel, loppers hung in organized rows, a toolbox on a shelf, and on the floor, apple peels, faintly dried, curling like dead petals. But what caught her attention was the rope, not the one from Peter's death. This one was unused, coiled and clean, too clean. She reached down, lifted it to her face, and paused. The scent hit her like a wave. Apples, yes, but not fresh ones. Overripe, fermenting. And something underneath it. Rust. Blood? No, not blood. Memory. A sharp image flashed through her mind. A man, mid-30s, slim build, standing alone among the trees. Not Peter. Someone else. Not hanging. Just waiting. Watching something. Or someone. Then it was gone. Helena blinked, heart pounding. She placed the rope down carefully and turned to Vivian. "Has anyone else died like this? In the town?" Vivian looked startled. "You mean suicide?" Helena nodded. Vivian was quiet for a moment, then said, "Yes. 2 others. One was just last year. The other, maybe 3 years ago. The sheriff said it was the isolation. Something about the harvest season affecting mental health. Do you know their names? Tom Lanier and Charlie Bowman. But I didn't know them personally. I just remember their obituaries." Helena nodded slowly. 3 men, same small town, all supposedly hanging themselves in or near orchards. Too specific, too staged. Back at her car, Helena flipped open her notebook and wrote 2 words in the margin beneath Peter Kessler's name, not the first. She looked up at the orchard one last time. The trees were still, but something in their symmetry felt off, too perfect, like the scene had been arranged, and she had the creeping sense that someone was watching her. Chapter 2. The Quiet Ones. Helena's motel room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old curtains. She set her files on the small desk and opened her laptop. A weak Wi-Fi signal blinked in and out, but it was enough to start digging. She pulled the death records for Tom Lanier and Charlie Bowman, the 2 men Vivian mentioned. Both were ruled suicides, both found hanging, and both within a 15-mile radius of Ash Hollow. She clicked through local articles. Sparse details, no mention of suicide notes, no prior mental health issues noted in either case. What they did share was eerie. Both were married, both lived just outside town, and both died in late September, at the tail end of harvest season. Helena circled the word in her notebook. Seasonal ritual? Symbolic? Or just cover? There was no mention of connections between the men. The sheriff hadn't flagged a pattern, but when you didn't look for patterns, you rarely found them. She called the coroner's office. A curt woman answered. "Requesting access to Peter Kessler's full report," Helena said, "and to autopsy files for Lanier and Bowman. Are you with law enforcement?" "Private investigator, authorized by a family member." A pause. "I'll need to verify with the sheriff." "I understand," Helena said. "Please also note that these cases may be linked." She hung up before the woman could argue. That afternoon, Helena visited Ash Hollow Gazette, the town's sleepy newspaper. The front office was empty, except for a young woman at a desk, feet propped up, earbuds in. She looked up as Helena approached. "You're not local," she said. "I'm Helena Monroe. I'm looking into Peter Kessler's death." "Ah, the orchard case." She sat up and yanked out her earbuds. "Name's Grace. You're the second person who's asked about it this week." Helena raised an eyebrow. "Really? Who was the first?" "Some reporter from the city. Didn't leave a name. Just asked weird questions. Seemed paranoid." Grace had the restless energy of someone desperate to prove herself. Helena filed that away. "I'm following up on more than Peter," she said. "Tom Lanier, Charlie Bowman. Did you report on them?" Grace pulled open a drawer and flipped through a manila folder. "Not really. Obits, mostly. This town doesn't ask questions, it doesn't want answered." Helena waited. Grace slid a slip of paper across the desk. "You didn't get this from me. It's anonymous. Came in 2 days after Peter's funeral. No return address." Helena unfolded it. Typed. Printed. Grainy. "Peter wasn't the first. Look into Tom Lanier. Start with his wife." No signature. Helena stared at it. Grace lowered her voice. "Tom's widow still lives on the edge of town. Keeps to herself. Some say she hasn't spoken to anyone since the funeral. The Lanier house sat behind a sagging fence and an overgrown lawn. Curtains drawn. No car in the driveway." Helena knocked. Waited. A soft shuffle answered. The door opened 2 inches. A woman in her late 50s, eyes sunken, face pale. "I'm not here to bother you," Helena said gently. "I'm investigating Peter Kessler's death. I believe your husband's case may be connected." Silence. Then, "Go away. I have reason to believe what happened to Tom wasn't suicide." The woman hesitated. "I know you were part of a group called the Renewal Path," Helena added. The door opened wider. She looked Helena in the eye. "They said we were healing." "Who said that?" The woman stepped back inside. Helena thought she was closing the door until she returned holding a business card. "The Renewal Path. Dr. Colin Reed, grief recovery consultant. No address, just a number. She handed it to Helena. Then she shut the door and drew the curtain. Back at the motel, Helena dialed the number. A warm male voice answered on the second ring. "This is Dr. Reed. Hi, I recently lost someone. I heard your group helps people move forward." A pause. "We do. We believe in transformation through letting go. Where are you calling from?" "Ash Hollow. Can you come tomorrow evening? Quiet session, just a few of us." "I'll be there." As she hung up, a new message lit up her phone. Blocked number. No text. Just a photo of Helena standing in Peter's orchard earlier that day, from a distance. She hadn't seen anyone there, but someone had been watching. Chapter 3, A Pattern Beneath the Branches. Helena stared at the photo on her phone. It was grainy, taken from a distance, but unmistakably her, kneeling beside the ladder in Peter Kessler's orchard. The timestamp was from that morning. She hadn't seen a soul. She checked the metadata, scrubbed clean. Whoever sent it wanted her to know two things. They were watching, and they were smart enough to cover their tracks. She locked the phone, slid it into her jacket, and sat at the motel desk. The thread was tightening. Someone else knew this wasn't about grief or coincidence. Someone else knew these were killings, and they wanted her to back off. Instead, Helena leaned into it. The next morning, she paid a visit to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Dean Abbott was in his early 60s, built like a man who used to throw hay bales and still missed it. He looked at Helena like she was a bad storm on the forecast. "I've heard you've been asking around," he said, motioning to the hard chair across from his desk. "I've been hired to investigate Peter Kessler's death." "It was suicide," Abbott replied flat. "Case closed. So were Tom Lanier's and Charlie Bowman's." The sheriff's brow twitched, just slightly. 3 men, 3 tragedies, all married, all died the same way, all in a 5-mile radius. He shrugged. "It's a hard life out here. Isolation, long hours, quiet pressure. People break, and yet, not one left a note. No history of mental illness, no suicide hotline calls. Nothing." Abbott's eyes narrowed. "What exactly are you implying? That maybe someone is guiding them to it, or pushing them?" The sheriff leaned forward. "Ms. Monroe, I know your type. You dig where there's nothing and make people nervous. Leave this town alone." Helena stood. "I'll stop digging when I stop finding things." As she turned to leave, she noticed a stack of counseling brochures on the reception counter. The renewal path, distributed with the town's blessing. That afternoon, Helena returned to Peter's orchard. She circled the property again, taking a different path this time. Wider, slower. A trail behind the shed led deeper into the trees. And there, she spotted it. An out-of-place shoe print in the soft dirt. Too small to be Peter's. Recent, leading toward the rear fence, and beyond that, a neighboring property. She followed. The trail curved into a sparse grove and ended at an empty apple crate turned on its side. Inside, a coffee thermos and a used tissue. Someone had been watching the Kessler property. Regularly. From here, she turned back toward the orchard. If Peter had been lured here, the watcher would have had a perfect view. Back in town, Helena stopped at the library and pulled the microfiche of old town records. She found an article from 2017 about Charlie Bowman, the first death. His widow, Lydia, had spoken at his memorial. Charlie wasn't a sad man, she'd said. He just needed peace. Helena ran the names. Lydia Bowman, Tom Lanier's wife, Vivian Kessler, and one more. Marcy Duran, widowed 2 years ago. Husband found drowned in his own irrigation ditch. Ruled accidental. Also, a former attendee of the Renewal Path's women's sessions. A pattern within the pattern. The men died, and the women grieved, differently. As the sun began to dip, Helena returned to her motel to change before the renewal path session. Her bag sat where she'd left it, her files untouched, but the room felt wrong. She opened the drawer to her nightstand. The recorder she kept for voice memos was gone. No sign of forced entry. She checked her laptop. The folder she'd created, marked Kessler case, was empty. Someone had been in her room. Someone who knew exactly what to erase, but not how fast she worked. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the original copies of her orchard notes, never digitized, never out of reach. They hadn't erased her work. They'd just confirmed it was dangerous. At 6:58 p.m., Helena pulled into the gravel lot behind the Renewal Path Center. The building looked like a repurposed farmhouse, converted to calm. Sage green siding, white trim, wind chimes whispering at the entrance. Inside, it smelled of sandalwood and lemon balm. Soft chairs arranged in a circle. Warm lighting. A table with tea. Dr. Colin Reed emerged from a hallway. Early 40s, clean-shaven, charismatic without being too polished. The kind of man who made you lean in without realizing it. "Welcome," he said, voice soothing. "You must be Helena." She paused, masking her surprise. She had never given her real name. Chapter 4. The Man with the Soothing Voice. Helena kept her expression neutral. "I didn't give my name." Dr. Reed smiled gently, as if she'd just made a charming mistake. "We keep track of interest," he said. "We like to make sure those in pain feel seen before they even speak." His words were smooth, practiced. The warmth in his tone had no temperature. Helena had met manipulators like this before. They always smelled like fresh tea and quiet desperation. "Please," he said, gesturing to a chair in the circle. "Tonight is small, just 5 of us. We keep it intimate." Helena nodded and sat. The other attendees filtered in. 3 women, 1 man, all middle-aged, hollowed eyes, still wearing grief like it was pinned to their sleeves. They introduced themselves quietly, first names only. "I'm here for my brother," one said. "He passed last year. Accident, they said." "My husband," another whispered. "Cancer. At least that's what they told us." Dr. Reed nodded with measured empathy, validating every word with silence and subtle head tilts. Helena watched. The man didn't speak at all. He sat, stiffly, eyes down, hands fidgeting with a bracelet. His name, according to the brief introductions, was Walter. His face was pale, expression unreadable. Reed turned to Helena. "And you?" She gave a soft sigh, playing along. "My partner. Orchard accident?" He smiled knowingly. "They never leave us, you know." "Not really. They just ask to be released." There was a stillness after that. One Helena knew wasn't natural. It was cultivated. No one asked what that meant. No one pushed. And no one, not even Walter, looked surprised. After the session ended, Helena hung back while the others filed out. She poured herself some tea, not drinking it. Dr. Reed stepped closer. "We meet twice a week. We offer one-on-one sessions too, if you ever need. Personal guidance." "Thanks," she said. "You have a lovely space." He watched her closely. "Pain brings clarity, but only if you let go of what clouds the truth." Helena tilted her head. "Do you help people? Let go?" Reed's expression didn't change, but his eyes flickered, just for a second. "I help them find peace," he said. She left the building with the taste of sage on her tongue and unease in her gut. Instead of returning to her motel, Helena followed Walter. He walked alone, hunched, coat collar pulled high despite the mild evening air. His pace was steady, but every few steps he glanced behind him, as if expecting to see a shadow. He turned down a dirt road that bordered the woods behind the Renewal Path Center. Helena stayed distant. He disappeared into the trees. She followed, boots crunching lightly over fallen leaves. Ahead, through the thinning brush, she saw movement. Walter stood beneath a low branch of a gnarled apple tree. A piece of rope was draped over the branch. He looked up at it, then down at his feet. Helena moved closer. "Walter," she said quietly. He jolted, dropping the rope. He didn't speak, just stared at her, as if waiting for permission. "Why were you out here?" she asked. He swallowed. Dr. Reed said sometimes, "If you imagine the moment, you take away its power." Was that his idea or yours? Walter's lips trembled. He said grief is a burden, that if I wasn't ready to let go of the person I used to be, I'd never heal, that I had a choice. "Did he tell you to come here tonight?" Walter looked away. Helena stepped forward, lifted the rope. It was brand new, unused, but already tied in a loop. She took a breath. "Has he ever told you about the others? Charlie Bowman? Tom Lanier?" Walter's head snapped up. "We don't talk about them." "Why?" He didn't answer. She held his gaze. "Walter, are you planning to hurt yourself?" "No," he said quickly. "No, I swear. I needed to feel what it might be like to be free." A sound broke the stillness. A branch snapped nearby. Helena spun, but the woods were dark. Too dark. "Someone's watching," she murmured. Walter took off running. Helena turned in a slow circle, heart racing, scanning for movement. Nothing. But the scent hit her again. Apples. Overripe. Wet earth. Rope. She took one step back, and something sharp crunched beneath her boot. A broken phone. The screen smashed. Its flashlight flickered weakly before going out. Chapter 5. The Widow's Club. The broken phone still flickered at Helena's feet, its weak glow sputtering like a candle in wind. She crouched to pick it up. The screen was locked, but the case was distinctive, silver and floral. She'd seen it before. Vivian Kessler had the same one. Helena straightened and scanned the woods again. Whoever had been there was gone now, but the message was clear. Someone was planting signs and choosing what she found. Back at her motel, Helena set the smashed phone beside her notes. If it belonged to Vivian, then either someone had taken it from her, or Vivian had followed her into the woods and hadn't wanted to be seen. She opened the folder she'd started. The widows, Vivian, Lydia Bowman, Ellen Lanier, and now a possible fourth. Marie Dalton, wife of a man who died 3 years ago. Official cause, pesticide exposure. But Helena had her doubts. Marie had attended renewal path meetings before and after his death. Each woman had been described in town records and gossip as resilient, quiet, changed after the funeral. Each had cut ties with most people shortly afterward. Helena underlined a pattern. The men died. The women grieved. And then the women disappeared, emotionally, socially, sometimes even legally. Vivian was the only one who had gone public. That made her either brave or reckless. The next morning, Helena arrived at the Kessler farmhouse unannounced. Vivian answered in a robe, hair pinned, expression unreadable. Her eyes flicked to the side just briefly. "You dropped something in the orchard," Helena said, holding up the phone. Vivian's lips parted, then closed. "I thought you said you weren't there last night." "I wasn't," she said carefully. Helena waited. Vivian stepped aside to let her in. The house was spotless again. Too spotless. "You followed me," Helena said once they were seated. "Why?" Vivian looked down at her hands. No twisting this time. Just stillness. "I wanted to see if you were close to the truth. Then help me find it." Vivian hesitated, then said, "There's a group, not just the therapy sessions. Something more. Private, a separate circle. For women." Helena leaned forward. "How private?" "We met in homes, not at the center." Always at night, always small. We called it the reflection circle. Who led it? Vivian swallowed. Reed's assistant, Nora Bell. But it wasn't really about grief. What was it about? Letting go, letting them go. Vivian stood and walked to a drawer. She pulled out a small leather-bound journal, worn edges, a silk ribbon marking a page. I wrote this down. The last night we met before Peter died. Helena read the entry. We're not destroying them. We're freeing them. From cycles, from fear. If we carry the weight of their struggle, we never escape. We guide them, softly, with love. She looked up. You were being coached. Vivian nodded, voice barely a whisper. They made it sound so pure, like mercy. Helena closed the book slowly. You didn't tie the rope, did you? Vivian shook her head. No. I left the barn unlocked, that's all. I didn't know someone else would be there. Someone was. Helena's next stop was the Renewal Path Centre. She waited until evening, parked a block away, and watched. The lights went out just after 10. No one left. She approached on foot. The side door had a security keypad. But the back office window? Old, wooden, and loose on its hinge. Inside, the air was heavy with lavender. She moved fast, flashlight low. Red's office was minimalist bookshelves, a small Buddha statue, framed testimonials. She found a locked file cabinet behind the desk. It didn't take long. 3 pins and a practiced hand, and the drawer clicked open. Inside, folders labelled voluntary release profiles. Names, photos, notes, all men. At the back, a red folder labelled Wives Circle confirmed participants. Vivian, Lydia, Marie, Nora Bell. One more name, half crossed out, G. Hollis. Helena stared, Grace Hollis. The reporter. She left quickly and drove straight to Grace's apartment. She knocked once. No answer. Twice. Still nothing. She pressed her ear to the door. Nothing. But as she turned to leave, a muffled sound made her freeze. A crash. Then silence. Helena pulled out her lockpick. It took 10 seconds. Inside, the living room lights were off. A chair had toppled. A cup lay shattered on the floor. And in the kitchen, Grace, unconscious, face down beside the sink, a bottle of wine nearby, and a torn, half-burned notebook in the trash. Helena rushed to her side, checking her pulse. Steady, but shallow. On the counter, scrawled in red pen. It was supposed to be peaceful. Chapter 6, Apples and Ashes. Grace's breathing was slow but stable. Helena turned her onto her side, clearing the airway, then checked the bottle of wine. Unopened. The glass had been broken deliberately. This wasn't an accident. It was a message. Helena scanned the kitchen for anything overlooked. The notebook in the trash was mostly burned, but a few pages survived. One held a list. Lanier, Bowman, Kessler. Next. Grace had been making her own connections. She had seen the pattern, just like Helena. But someone had silenced her before she could finish. Helena dialed emergency services and gave a false name. She stayed only long enough to make sure help arrived, then disappeared into the night. Back in her motel room, Helena stared at the red folder she'd stolen from Reed's cabinet. Wives Circle, confirmed participants. She flipped through the pages again, eyes locking on Vivian's intake notes. Expresses relief after Peter's passing. Said she feels clarity. Demonstrates readiness. Readiness for what? Further down, she will complete the final step without interference. Vivian had insisted she didn't tie the rope, that she'd only left the barn unlocked. But if this was Reed's handwriting, he'd been watching her choices like a handler preparing a subject for an experiment, and she'd passed. Helena circled the name Nora Bell, assistant, facilitator, the one running the secret women's sessions. She opened her laptop and searched. No credentials, no online presence, no photos, except one. A group photo from a grief workshop 7 years ago. Helena zoomed in. Nora was younger, hair longer, wearing a therapist's badge clipped to her sweater, and standing beside her, smiling gently. Colin Reed. They weren't just colleagues. They had been running this script for years. The next morning, Helena returned to the Kessler orchard. It had rained overnight. The air was sharp with wet soil and bruised apples. The trees stood in their silent rows, patient as ever. Helena headed toward the shed again, this time with gloves and a flashlight. Inside, the floor was clean. Too clean. A fresh bleach scent still clung to the walls. She tapped along the far edge with her foot. Nothing, but the shovel rack caught her attention. One of the handles was new, unweathered, slightly out of place. She pulled it off the wall. It wasn't a shovel. It was a false handle, hollow inside. Tucked within it, a folded piece of paper sealed in plastic. Helena opened it carefully. A handwritten note, not Peter's handwriting. She read, "I don't want to do this, but I don't see a way out. They said she'd be better without me. That I was the weight holding her down. That maybe this was the one thing I could give her. I just want her to be free." No signature. But the implication was clear. Peter had been convinced, not suicidal. Coerced. Helena drove straight to Vivian's. She didn't bother with pleasantries. Just held up the note. Vivian's face turned pale. "I didn't write that," she whispered. "I know. But you believed what they told you, didn't you?" Vivian sat slowly, her hands trembling. "They said I was drowning, that he was making it worse, that if I didn't let him go, I'd go under too." "Letting him go wasn't the problem," Helena said quietly. "It's that someone told you it was kindness to watch him die." Vivian nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "They made it feel like salvation." Helena hesitated. "I need to know what the final step was. What did they ask you to do?" Vivian wiped her eyes. "We were told to prepare a place, a symbolic space, a clean, peaceful setting where the soul could cross freely. I thought it was just metaphor. It wasn't." Vivian reached into a drawer and pulled out a photo. Peter. Standing in the orchard, bins stacked behind him, a small fire pit smouldering in the distance. "They asked us to burn something meaningful afterward," she said. "Ash to ash." Helena froze. "What did you burn?" "My wedding veil." She paused. "And a bundle of his letters." Helena took a breath. "Was anyone else there?" Vivian looked up. "Yes," she said softly. "Nora Bell stood beside me the whole time." That night, Helena returned to the Renewal Path Center. She parked behind the building and watched. Around 11 p.m., the lights flicked on in the upper room. A silhouette moved past the window. Long hair, thin frame. Nora Bell. She was still there. Helena reached for her recorder. It was missing. In its place, on the front seat of her locked car, sat a single object, a half-burned piece of lace. Chapter 7. Secrets in the Shed. Helena stared at the lace. It was delicate, scorched along one edge, still holding the faint scent of smoke. Wedding veil lace. Not just a threat, a message. Someone had been inside her car. Again. They weren't just watching now. They were reminding her that they knew where she was, what she had, and what she still hadn't figured out. She bagged the lace, started the car, and drove to the only place left in town that might have answers no one wanted her to find. The original Renewal Path property, an abandoned farmhouse registered under a defunct foundation name, miles from the current center. Reed had buried his past, but he hadn't moved fast enough. The house was on the edge of a long-forgotten orchard, overgrown and lost to time. The grass was waist-high, the trees sagging under the weight of neglect. Helena parked in the overgrown drive and approached slowly, flashlight in hand, gloved and ready. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and silence. Floorboards moaned beneath her feet. The wallpaper peeled in long strips like skin shedding itself. Despite the rot and silence, there were fresh footprints in the dust. Someone had been here recently. She followed them past the decaying kitchen, where they ended in front of a locked storage room sealed with 2 heavy bolts, newer than the frame that held them. She picked both in under a minute. The door creaked open. Inside, rows of storage bins labeled by date: 2015, 2016, 2017, each with initials. Helena crouched and opened one marked PK. Inside, a leather-bound journal, a USB drive, a stack of printed counseling records. She opened the journal first. It wasn't Peter's handwriting. It was Reed's. Detailed notes on sessions. Word-for-word transcripts of conversations. Client shows hesitation. Advised that resistance is a form of fear. Client responds to guided grief ritual. Trust increasing. Confirmed. Spouse participated in reflection exercise and pre-approved space. Pre-approved space. The orchard. Peter had been led step by step into a curated death. She plugged the USB into her tablet and opened the audio folder. The first file was labeled Final Entry, Consent Confirmed. She pressed play. Peter's voice filled the room. Quiet. Hesitant. I want her to have peace, I think. Maybe this is the only way I stop holding her back. Then Reed's voice, soft and soothing. You understand this is your decision, that no one is forcing you. Peter. Yes, I hope she forgives me. Click. End of file. Helena sat still for a long moment. It was clear. Peter had been manipulated, isolated, emotionally broken down until suicide looked like generosity. Reed hadn't killed him with his hands. He'd done it with words. On her way out, Helena noticed something odd. A trapdoor in the floor behind the bins. No markings, no handle. Just a small iron ring set into the wood. She pulled it open. A ladder descended into darkness. She turned on her flashlight and climbed down. The basement was narrow and unfinished concrete, low ceiling, musty. But it wasn't empty. Along the far wall stood a row of chairs, each with a folded blanket and a candle on the floor in front of it. An old ritual space, but not for comfort, for indoctrination. Helena stepped closer and found a box tucked behind the last chair. Inside, candles, rope, white veils, a stack of blank envelopes, and beneath them, a thin black binder labeled in embossed gold. Release protocol. Facilitator manual. She opened it. The chapters read like a how-to guide in psychological surrender. Phase 1, isolation. Phase 2, reframing. Phase 3, rehearsal. Phase 4, closure. Each page detailed scripts, recommended questions, suggested actions for facilitators. On the final page, a handwritten note from Reed. Only the willing are worthy. Resistance is the last mask of attachment. Helena shut the binder with a snap and climbed out of the pit. The therapy wasn't therapy. It was training. She didn't go back to the motel that night. She drove to Grace's hospital room. Grace was awake, pale and quiet, a bandage on her temple. You were right, she said when Helena entered. It wasn't just about grief. Helena sat beside her. You were part of the women's group. I was curious, Grace admitted. I thought if I got close enough, I could write the truth. But Nora saw through me, said I wasn't ready, that I asked too many questions. Helena reached into her bag and placed the binder on the table. Tell me everything you know about the final step. Grace looked at the cover, then back at Helena, and whispered, The last step is letting them die in front of you. Chapter 8. The Man Who Didn't Die. Grace's voice barely rose above a whisper. They called it the moment of release. We were told not to interfere, just to be present. That silence was the final gift. Helena gripped the edge of the hospital bed. Are you saying some of the women, wives, watched their husbands die? Grace nodded. Not all of them. Just the ones they said were emotionally ready. Some couldn't go through with it. But the group taught us that grief was a fog, and only by letting go, truly letting go, could we emerge from it. Helena leaned forward. Did you witness one? No. Grace looked away. But I came close. There was a man, he backed out, he ran. They never said his name again. Helena's heart ticked faster. Do you remember anything about him? Only that he lived on the edge of town. Used to work with wood. A carpenter, maybe. It was a small thread, but a critical one. She spent the next 6 hours digging. Old directories, business licenses, property records. Then, finally, Glenn Harrow, cabinet maker. Married, then suddenly divorced 5 years ago. Retreated from public life. Still listed on the books as living at a broken-down workshop outside town limits. Helena found the building at dusk. The shop was shuttered, windows barred. But a dog barked from the back, and smoke rose faintly from a chimney. She knocked. No answer. She tried again. Finally, the door creaked open. A man in his 60s stared at her, unshaven and suspicious. One hand rested behind the doorframe, on a bat, or maybe something worse. I'm not here to hurt you, Helena said quickly. I'm looking into deaths connected to the renewal path. I believe you were a member, and I believe you survived something the others didn't. The man didn't move. Then, slowly, he opened the door wider. Inside, the workshop smelled of sawdust and smoke. Wood carvings lined the walls. Birds, trees, folded hands. Pieces that didn't speak of peace. They screamed of interrupted sorrow. Glenn sat at a workbench, lighting a cigarette with shaky fingers. I haven't spoken about them in years, he said. No one wants to hear what I saw. I do. He took a long drag. My wife, Nina, joined the women's group first. She changed. Soft at first. Then colder. Distant. She said she was finding clarity. He looked up at Helena. And one day, she brought me to the orchard. Helena said nothing. Let him speak. They told me it was a ritual, a symbolic shedding, that I'd feel reborn. They lit candles, burned our wedding photo, gave me a drink that made my hands shake and my chest go numb. And then, he inhaled sharply. She told me she forgave me, and that I could go. Go where? Helena asked. To rest, he said. They handed me the rope, told me I could hang it myself, or they could help. That either way, my pain would end. Helena's stomach turned. What did you do? I ran. I didn't stop until I hit the highway. I never saw Nina again. I heard she remarried. Reed told the group I'd been released another way. Helena placed a photo on the table. Peter Kessler. Did you know him? Glenn nodded slowly. He was in the next group after me. He stayed. He was quieter than the rest. Helena leaned forward. Would you testify? Glenn's eyes narrowed. I don't trust courts, but I'll tell the truth, if it brings that snake down. That night, Helena returned to her motel and found a plain manila envelope taped to her door. Inside, a photo of Glenn Harrow, a photo of Helena speaking to Grace at the hospital, and a handwritten note, You're putting them all in danger. Stop before someone else gets hurt. She scanned the lot. No cameras. No witnesses. They were watching her every move, but the threat only strengthened her resolve. Helena didn't sleep. She organized everything. The counseling transcripts, the USB with Peter's recording, Glenn Harrow's statement, the release protocol binder. It was more than enough for a preliminary arrest. But the problem wasn't just Reed. It was Nora, the wives. The quiet circle no one could trace. Helena needed one more piece to tie it all together, and she found it in an email from an anonymous address. Subject line, "You missed one." Attached, a photo of Vivian Kessler taken that morning, standing in the orchard, alone. Behind her, a new rope swaying from the same tree Peter died beneath. Chapter 9. Poison Beneath the Bark. Helena drove to the orchard in silence. The sun was rising over Ash Hollow, washing the apple trees in pale gold. But there was no warmth in the light. It only made the shadows longer. She parked at the edge of the Kessler property and approached on foot. Vivian stood beneath the same tree where Peter had died. Her black coat fluttered lightly in the breeze, and in her hand, undeniably, was a new length of rope. Helena stopped a few paces back. "Vivian?" Vivian didn't turn. "It's peaceful here in the morning. He always loved the quiet." Helena's voice was steady. "What are you doing?" Vivian glanced down at the rope. "I'm not planning anything. Not for myself. I needed to remember how it felt. That last moment before everything fell apart." Helena stepped closer. "Someone sent me a photo of you standing here. You're being watched. They want you to take the fall for all of it." Vivian finally looked at her. "They already blamed me once," she said. "I didn't stop him. I didn't try hard enough. The group said I was giving him peace. But now I see it. It wasn't peace. It was erasure." Helena held out her hand. "Come away from the tree. I need your help." Vivian hesitated, then nodded, lowering the rope. Back at the motel, Helena showed her the evidence, the transcripts, the recordings, Glenn Harrow's story, the binder. Vivian read every word in silence. "They used us," she whispered. "Made us believe we were strong by letting go. But we were just tools." "There's a meeting tonight," Helena said, "at the Renewal Path Center. I want you there." Vivian looked at her, uncertain. "I can't make them believe what I know," Helena said. "But you can show them what they've ignored." At 7:30 p.m., the parking lot outside the center filled quietly. Inside, a dozen chairs were arranged in a perfect circle. Nora Bell stood at the front, clipboard in hand, warm smile in place. Helena watched from the edge of the room as the women filtered in. Vivian was the last to enter. Nora's smile faltered when she saw her. "Vivian," she said, "we didn't expect you tonight." "I needed clarity," Vivian replied. "You said this space was sacred, that it was for transformation. I think it's time I transformed." Nora opened her mouth to respond, but Helena stepped forward before she could speak. "I found Peter's confession," Helena said. "I have the recording of his final session. I know what you did." Gasps rippled through the group. One woman stood. "You're not part of this. You don't get to come in here and accuse people." Helena raised her voice. "You were manipulated, conditioned, taught that silence was kindness. But this was psychological engineering." Nora's voice cut through the noise, calm and sharp. "They chose their paths. No one was forced. You can't prosecute grief." Helena stepped closer. "Then why the rituals, the burned items, the isolated counseling sessions and missing records? Why are some of your former members dead?" She turned to the group. "You know something's wrong. You felt it. But Reed and Nora made you believe it was part of healing." She opened the binder and began reading aloud. "Reframing is the process of helping the subject accept their exit as a gift to others. The role of the spouse is to observe, validate, and avoid interference." Gasps, murmurs, eyes wide, faces pale. Vivian stepped forward. "I saw Peter walk into that orchard. I thought I was doing the right thing. But I wasn't. I was letting him die because someone convinced me it was noble." Her voice cracked. "I will never stop regretting that." Nora's mask cracked. "You don't understand what we've built." What we've preserved. These people were drowning. We offered them peace. Helena met her gaze. You offered them poison, disguised as clarity. Police burst through the doors 30 seconds later. Someone in the group had texted Helena's location and instructions. Sheriff Abbott led the charge. Rudd, already present in the back, stood frozen. Nora didn't resist, but as the officers cuffed her, she leaned close to Helena. You can't stop people from choosing the exit. You just don't like that I made it beautiful. Helena didn't flinch. You made it a performance, she said. And now the curtains closed. Outside, flashlights cut through the orchard darkness as officers marked the ground. Evidence was gathered. Red and Nora were taken away. Helena stood beside Vivian, watching the last of the trees fade into shadow. They'll ask why I didn't say something sooner, Vivian murmured. Helena put a hand on her shoulder. Then tell them the truth. Vivian nodded. Then she reached into her coat pocket and handed Helena a small black flash drive. I kept one recording, she said. From the first night Nora told us what we'd be asked to do. Helena stared at it. The final piece, Chapter 10, The Orchard Ritual. The recording clicked on with a faint hum. Helena sat alone in her motel room, the lights off, Vivian's flash drive glowing faintly in her laptop. The audio was muffled but clear enough. Nora Bell's voice filled the silence. Release begins with acknowledgement. Your partner, your father, your son, each of them holds pain that cannot be cured by love. Your role is not to save them. It is to bless their passage. There was no comfort in her tone, only control, language refined into weaponry. Helena hit stop. That was enough. By dawn, Sheriff Abbott had the drive in evidence. Red and Nora were charged with multiple counts of criminal negligence, coercion, conspiracy, and psychological abuse leading to wrongful death. A deeper investigation was underway. But not all justice would come through courtrooms. Some of it was already unraveling in the eyes of those who had sat in that circle. 3 days later, Helena stood once more at the edge of Peter Kessler's orchard. The rope was gone. The branch where he died had been sawn off by Vivian's request cut clean, burned quietly in the fire pit out back. A small stone now sat in its place. No name. Just a word etched into the surface. Remembrance. Vivian stood beside her. I still dream about him, she said. But in the dreams now, he's walking away from the tree. That's not guilt, Helena said. That's memory healing itself. Vivian turned. Will you stay for the trial? No, Helena said. My part is done, and there's another case waiting. Vivian smiled faintly. You never stop, do you? Helena looked out across the trees. When you've seen what I've seen, stopping isn't peace, it's surrender. Helena packed her files that night, sealing the last folder with the name Kessler inked on the front. She slid it into her case alongside all the others, each one marked by names, each one bound by silence broken. She stepped outside into the cooling evening. A breeze drifted from the north, carrying the faintest scent of ripened apples. But this time it didn't feel like warning. It felt like closure. End of chapter and end of book. Like and subscribe to support our channel and to listen to more intriguing investigative stories.